was really nervous. They're pulling away and I'm thinking, I'm in Canada. I'm not even in my home country. And even if I wanted to get home, which is shorter than the destination of New Mexico, that's still a long way to go. So, I'm going to have to survive on my ability and my planning and my gear and put it all to work. It just became a stark reality in that moment, but it didn't last long because very shortly after that, I hit some really fun single track. And it kind of transported me back to all of those trips that I'd done before when I was enjoying myself. And I realized, oh, right, that's why I'm doing this, because this is the thing that makes me happy, to be here in this moment doing this thing.
Welcome to Seek Travel Ride, where we share the stories and experiences of people taking amazing adventures by bike. Whether it's crossing state borders, mountain ranges, countries or continents, we want to share that spirit of adventuring on two wheels with our listeners. Hello everyone, I'm just popping in to say that I'm currently taking a short podcasting break at the moment, but I didn't want to leave your feed empty. So over the next few weeks, I'm re-releasing some of my favourite conversations from our back catalogue. And this week is a chat with Katrina Hase, who took on the legendary Great Divide mountain bike route. This episode originally aired in April 2024, and Katrina's reflections on big climbs, long days, and moments out there in the wilderness on the GDMBR are just as inspiring to listen to now as they were then. Whether you missed it for the first time or want to hear it again, enjoy this ride along the divide with Katrina, and I'll be back with new episodes in the weeks to come. Hello, I'm your host, Bella Malloy, and I'm excited to introduce my guest for today's episode of Seek Travel Ride, Katrina Hase. In 2023, Katrina decided to celebrate two big life milestones by bikepacking the Great Divide mountain bike route, from Canada all the way to the Mexican border. Katrina had turned 50, and equally significant to her was that she was also celebrating 10 years of being sober. She first discovered the joys of riding dirt trails just a few years earlier when her son took up mountain biking. This soon became a sport which her whole family got involved in, and she's been fully immersed, it's safe to say, in this world on two wheels ever since. What started out as short rides on single track soon turned into longer ones, and then the idea of multi-day bikepacking trips started to take hold. When Katrina discovered the Great Divide mountain bike route, a goal was set, and it was only a matter of time before she herself would be at the trailhead, lining up to pedal her way all the way to the Mexican border. But there's always a backstory to people taking on trips like these, and I'm especially looking forward to digging into this more with Katrina as she shares her insights and experiences from this huge adventure. Katrina, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bella, for having me.
Oh, I'm super excited to dig into your story, Katrina. I think we're going to go down a few adventure trails, so to speak. But the question which I start my show with, and I ask this of all my guests, is, Katrina, do you remember the very first bike you ever rode?
I do. My brother and I got matching bikes, well, his and her bikes on Easter when I was very young. And mine was called a cactus flower, and it was a Huffy with training wheels, and it had these ridiculous Y-shaped bars on it and a banana-shaped seat, one of those long curving ones.
I love a bike with a banana seat. It's like that quintessential sort of old school bike that we sort of all, well, some of us more than others can remember, right?
Yes. But yeah, it got a lot of use.
You grew up in Minnesota, right?
That's correct. Yep. Born and raised.
Riding bikes when you were younger and stuff, was that part of growing up in Minnesota? Like, what was Minnesota like life for you?
Well, when there wasn't snow on the ground, we were always riding bikes. I lived on a cul-de-sac, and so it was kind of a regular communal activity, going around down the streets. And then when we got a little older, riding up to the 7-Eleven and getting big gulps, playing on the playground at the local school. And then as I got older, just kind of exploring further and further away from home, going to visit my friends. So it was an instrument of freedom as well, especially living up in the pre-development suburbs where I was.
It's one thing to grow up having those incidental outdoor moments growing up as a kid. But would you say that you loved or had a love for the outdoors from that time that sort of stayed with you ever since? Like, have you always been someone who's been happiest outside?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, in the suburban area that we were, I had a patch of woods in our backyard, and then beyond that was a farm with a lot of undeveloped land. And I spent most of my time in the woods, inventing things, playing pretend, mapping my way kind of around the farmers' fields, hiding from them so they didn't see us trespassing.
Love it. Love it. What sort of crops were they growing there?
I think they were doing corn, but he really didn't have a lot where we would play. It was kind of this open field, and then there was a woods just beyond that was just so tempting to go up and climb the trees out there. So, just from a young age, yeah, I always spent a lot of time outdoors. Vacations with our family were never like to Disneyland or anything. It was camping or going to like an old school resort and doing some fishing and things like that.
Nice. And so that's sort of just been part of your DNA in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something I have noticed about you, Katrina, is you are pretty talented in terms of creative design. You are a graphic designer, but you also paint.
Oh, yeah.
I've come across some of your paintings, which are mainly of birds, right?
And they're almost exclusively birds, yeah, except for my earlier things.
You might be called a twitcher or a birdie, perhaps.
I love it.
But I guess that's like an insight into someone who's taking notice of nature as well. Like, how does painting birds, like, how did that even become a thing for you?
Yeah, when we moved out to our home in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, we hung a feeder on a chance to see if we'd get anything, and they started coming, and I just became a little bit of a bird nut, started taking photographs as much as I could, and then, it transcends. So then when I'm out walking in nature, I'm hearing a song, and I'm thinking, what is it? So I have to stop until I can see it, and you just kind of naturally learn the different songs that birds make by hearing them first and then identifying them, and then just started keeping a mental list about all the birds that I've seen. And I realized, I was at a parking lot one time, and just outside like a discount store, and I heard a cedar waxwing, and the cedar waxwing is like just this gorgeous little bird that I'd never seen before. And there were just masses of them in like a decorative tree right outside the store. And I thought, boy, I feel sorry for all these people that are walking by because they don't realize like what a cool thing is happening right here under their noses. And I'm having this supreme experience right now of enjoying seeing them.
I sometimes think there's two types of people who are really present and mindful in the moment, and people who, to be fair, everyone's got things going on, right? But people who sort of like things don't go by. Fans of the show will know I'm pretty passionate about the outdoors. I love photography, and I especially love watching sunsets and sunrises. I'm a cloud lover, so I love seeing clouds take shape and stuff. The amount of times I've seen something and just thought everyone else is oblivious to this amazing thing that's going on. And you talking about, what was it, a cedar waxwing?
Yeah,
I'm going to have
right.
to write that down and find out exactly what this bird looks like now. But yeah, just this idea that you're taking note and being present in that moment with everyone sort of being oblivious by you. But it's one thing to sort of observe the birds and be captivated by them. It's another thing to start drawing them. Obviously, with your career path, it's something that you're talented with, but drawing and stuff, has that been part of your life just as much as, hiding from the farmer in the fields was as a kid?
Well, I've always had a thing for art supplies, but yeah, I didn't start painting until I went to design school and discovered that I really loved it. So when I started painting birds, what really got me was just their personalities. And so I would try to catch the personality of each bird, almost like they were portraits in the paintings that I did. And I thought that was just a unique perspective on them.
I love it. I have a real soft spot for birds. I love being captivated watching a soaring bird go past. I realize this is a podcast about bikes and not birds. Generally, people who are into bike adventures are into the outdoors, so stick with me, people. But do you have a favorite bird?
Well, I'm looking at one right now. It's the pileated woodpecker right outside my window. You'll have to look it up. It's just got this huge bird. It looks like an ancient pterodactyl kind of bird. But I'd have to say sandhill cranes too. I see those a lot on bike trips. And I hadn't seen one until I was like in my 30s. I was like, what is this bird and how have I not seen it ever before? It's huge. You can mistake them for deer if you're driving by in the field, and Yeah, I'd have to say Sandhill Cranes.
Katrina, I mentioned in my interview that you came into, a love of things on two wheels much later in life. And obviously, it would be fair to say from what I said in the introduction that parts of your adult life are probably so much transformed to what they used to be as well. You took on the GDMBR, Great Divide Mountain Bike Route, as a way of celebrating your 50th, but also 10 years of being sober, 10 years of sobriety. Are we able to sort of dig into what forced that change and what things have occurred in your life where you've had that sort of sliding doors change of moment to work to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when I stopped drinking, I realized that I had to replace that behavior with something that was meaningful or, that was engaging. Likewise, I realized, when I was drinking, I wasn't being active or participating. It was, yeah, kind of staying indoors kind of thing. So when I first stopped drinking, I needed to reach out, make new connections, new friends. And I decided to take a dance class. What the heck? Let's just give this a try. And at first, it was like a movement class called Nia. And I found that very freeing. And I liked the self expression of it. Tried ballroom dance, which was fun. But I finally signed up for a ballet class. And that was something that I was just completely awkward at when I was a kid. And I thought, I would just love another try at this. And first, it was an adult ballet class, but I kind of hit the ceiling of, ability and skills, what the class would do. So I asked if I could join some of the kids' class.
That's awesome. I love it.
I would take it more seriously. So here I am, and I'm not short. I don't look like a kid. I'm a like 5'9" woman. And I'd be in these classes with 10 to 14-year-olds and sticking out like a sore thumb. But I was just like the happiest I've ever been, and I took it really seriously. And pretty soon I was outgrowing that school and discovering that I needed to find a school that was even more serious. And I landed at this place that had the strict Russian teacher. And so you can see how, pretty soon I was taking ballet classes, I think 4 days a week, and long rehearsals on the weekends where they allow me to be in the Nutcracker and some of their spring shows, which was just a childhood dream for me. Again, person who was super awkward with their tall, lanky body, and now being able to have this discipline and really work hard at something. Like, it wasn't easy at all. My Russian teacher had a great way of giving backhanded compliments. Look, class, look at how Katrina can do this. And she's old.
Lovely. In Australia, we have a saying, subtle as a Mack truck.
Yeah.
Big semi-trailer, so yeah.
But I think I learned discipline. And, when you're committing yourself like that, it's so easy not to drink. You find a community. You filled that hole with something real. And it just felt right. So eventually when, my teacher retired, that was just when my son was getting into mountain biking. And I started going on some rides with those guys. They made it look pretty fun, my husband and my son, and started finding my own friends. I was so immersed in it so quickly. I kept trying to find new people to ride with, and especially women, because I felt like they would get kind of the struggle that a person goes through when they first start, not just like let the bike do the work for you.
I'm all in my head when I'm mountain biking. And as well, I mean, not to say that any other form of cycling is necessarily easier, but the self-talk that goes on when you start out on single track as well, and you're taking on things that maybe personally, Katrina, like my mind goes, I don't know how I'm going to do this, or that rock looks like a boulder, or, so I can appreciate that.
Yeah, the other side of it, though, is when you accomplish something, progress, you get over that barrier, and you're like, wow, did I just do that? Or remember how hard that was just a few months ago? And, so when you progress and you grow in the sport, it's just, yeah, it's an addiction of its own and a complete high. And it started exposing me to, I'd ride with anyone. If you give me a call, if you're willing, I will go ride with you. I'll drop everything.
Yeah, so it's your new passion in a way.
Yeah.
You mentioned there also there's like a sense of community within the group as well. I really got a feel for that, sort of digging into the background to your story as well. That feeling of comradeship, companionship on a bike, riding partners. One of your great friends there that you sparked a friendship with.
Rachel.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rachel.
You took on the 100 miler together?
Yeah, yeah, it was great. I actually met Rachel on a fat biking ride in the middle of the winter. We had a group ride, and she was the only other woman that showed up. And, you kind of size people up. And she had me chasing her from the very start. And so it was the two of us leading all these guys, kind of, huffing and puffing behind us, just in a mad race to the end of this group ride. And at the end, we were just fast friends, and we were kind of sharing like what we'd like to do. And the Mater had come on my radar as something that I would like to do. It's a 100-mile trail in the Badlands, and it's just absolutely gorgeously scenic. Oh, I should say the Badlands of North Dakota.
I'm so glad that you pronounced it so Mater Hay, because this Aussie was going to pronounce it as it's spelt, which was Moadoa. I love that.
But getting back to that day that I met Rachel, it was just like I shared this goal of mine, and she said, "Yeah, let's do it." At that time, I don't think I'd ridden more than 15 miles on a bike at one time, and I said, "Well, maybe we could do 25 miles a day." And she goes, "25? We could do 50." And I said, "Well, how about 40?" And so that's what we settled on. We ended up training together and getting to know each other throughout the summer, and eventually, yeah, did the ride together. It was amazing. That was the same summer, actually, too, that I was doing some local races, Olympic style short mountain bike races. And that's when I met Tracy as well. I was following her across the finish line. She came and talked to me right afterwards, and we hit it off real quick. And I said, we ought to be going for rides together too. So it's that type of thing. When you go to these races or these group rides, you immediately hit it off. And I have no qualms about just saying, let's hit it up. Let's hit some trails together. Let's ride. It doesn't matter age or anything. They're all younger than me, but
it's funny. I think of one of my closest friends, and we have a bit of an age gap as well, it's fair to say. But my gosh, it doesn't matter when we're on the bike. My goodness, the amount of hours we've done together, the amount of trips we've taken together as well, the ridiculous times our alarms went off to meet each other at ridiculous o'clock in the middle of the morning in Australia. Hey, Pam. And, but yeah, it doesn't matter, doesn't it? There's something that goes deeper when you make friendships on something like this as well, and you really build bonds that are of a greater depth, I feel, or at least that has been the case for me. And listening to you speak there, Katrina, it seems that's been the case for you as well.
Yeah.
You're taking on things and you can reflect back and go, wow, that was really hard for me 2 months ago, but now I can do it. Isn't that great? I imagine that you have that same depth of happiness seeing that happen with your friends as well.
Oh, absolutely. Like each of my friends has something that they're really good at and something that they need work on. And when I can help them on something that they need help with, like maybe a technical skill, that's something that I really enjoy and some people don't like as much, then I get really excited. But they're pushing me to go faster and they're pushing me to go longer. Tracy is, she's an engine, massive engine. She can just go and go all day. She's really instilled that work ethic in me and made me happy with the idea of riding for very long periods of time. And Rachel, I call her the rabbit because she's just fast and I just chase her all the time. But, I'm getting more fit as we go. So yeah, we're all growing together in our own particular ways.
In some way, though, I love it when there's a group dynamic where you're sort of challenging each other in different ways, but you're also just equally just happy to be riding with each other as well. It doesn't matter who's the fastest, doesn't matter who's the strongest. As a group together, your bond is what makes the group so solid as well.
Yeah, we celebrate each other's strengths for sure.
From the Mater Hay 100 miler, I can see how this has progressed for you, but there's still a progression that takes on again to doing a really long ride to then all of a sudden going, I actually want to do travel with my bike and I want to strap luggage onto it and I want to start this multi-day thing. How did that become a thought for you?
I mean, really the origin of it came down to the purchase of the gravel bike because I was looking to make this big purchase and realized the potential that you could put bags on the bike. This would be something that I could do long bike touring on. And since I had started going on these longer rides with Tracy, with Rachel, I realized that I love the exploring aspect of that. And it just made sense that the next step would be to get some bags on these bikes and go on multi-day adventures. I have put that down payment on the bike, and then I had to wait a whole, 6 months to get it. So then it was just obsessively researching bikepacking routes, bikepacking gear, and enjoying every minute of it, seeing the routes where I could go, videos of people bikepacking, and fully immersed myself in it.
And were you sort of looking at those videos, letting the algorithm suggest all these future potential adventures to you? Were you looking at them, visualizing what it would be like for yourself to be out there at some stage?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it never once occurred to me that that wasn't something that I could do. Or, yeah, I think every video I've watched, I picture myself in those places wanting to do those things. And the biggest one was the Great Divide mountain bike route. And that's how it really laid a seed in my head. I saw there's a YouTuber called Ryan Van Duzer, and he did the Great Divide mountain bike route. And before I had never even heard of it, didn't know what it was. I was just enthralled with the video series. I think I watched the entire thing. He put it out in a series. I think I watched it at least 3-4 times, and then he did a full length version, and I watched that several times as well. And I tried to learn the route and remember all the places, and I'd compare it to the map when I eventually got the maps and see where he was in the videos. And yeah, visually, I just became incredibly excited and obsessed with the idea of getting on that road and seeing that route for myself.
Sometimes it takes, this total lack of awareness that even a trail this long even exists, right? To then all of a sudden trying to find out every little bit about it, to then you've put a down payment on a gravel bike and, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. Did you realize how quickly that thought process was happening for you? You didn't know about the route before the gravel bike? Can I get that? Did the route exist for you before you bought the bike?
No.
Wow, I love it.
Yeah. And so as soon as I purchased the bike, was waiting for the bike and started researching all of these different routes, that's when I became aware of all the things that I could do with bike packing. And of course I knew I had to have some experience before I could just start on the Great Divide mountain bike route. So I started planning some local overnighters, and not content to just stop with that, I planned one in Colorado that was a hut to hut tour, and then another one in Colorado, which was actually a very challenging but extremely exciting backcountry route called the Vapor Trail. And, true to fashion, when I tried to find people to ride with, I looked to women. And there was a women's adventure bikepacking Facebook group, and just put it out there. I'm doing this ride on these dates. Would you be interested in going? And I had 2 people respond I think that was for the Vapor Trail. And then in preparation, I went completely, never met this woman before, but one of them that responded, she wanted to go on the Vapor Trail with me, Catherine. She went on the first bike packing overnighter that I ever did. That was in Iowa. And we became fast friends, which is what happens when women who like to bike get together.
Yeah, and then you have these adventures together, which is awesome. Can I ask you quickly there, the Vapor Trail? I've not heard of it before. You said it was quite challenging, and I'm picturing what I understand about Colorado. There's a lot of elevation there. There's a lot of climbers there, backcountry. What was it? Was it challenging from a elevation perspective? Was it challenging from a terrain? What made it so hard?
Yeah, it's a very mountainous route. You go up into the mountain range. Part of it is on the Colorado Trail, which is extremely rugged. You're above 9,000 feet, climbing up to, I think we got up to 12,000 feet at the end.
Wow, like 3,000 to 4,000 meters in elevation. That's crazy high.
Yes, it was a 4-day, 3-night trip, and there were no services along. So that was my first experience, really backcountry camping, being really relying on your own knowledge and training and preparations to get you through it.
Yeah.
In that trip too, it was Carrie. If you've watched my video series, she's the one that took me in Albuquerque. Again, a stranger until I met her. She had just decided to go on this trip with me. So Carrie and Kathleen went on the Vapor Trail. And then later on, it's just interesting that Carrie would be the one to save my trip on the GDMBR.
Yeah. Now see the progression. You get into the sport, there's a community, there's friendships that are building. There's obviously a competitive side to you because you're doing races and you're chasing people's wheels and you're pushing yourself to get better technical skills as well, which I love. I can see how buying a bike and putting luggage on it opens up the possibility of more adventures. But there's still a level of preparation that you need to do to be able to allow yourself to even take on certain things. So it goes beyond your bike skills then, doesn't it? Like that idea that you're reliant on you when you take on adventures like the GDE MBR. You had some company on portions of the trail, but you were also alone for a fair bit too. Can you take me through the process of how you prepare for going out on your own for such a long amount of time into these remote places on these type of adventures?
Yes, I think that I didn't really realize how difficult it was because I had some very strong female role models. So the summer before, I had been following a person named Kate Ankofsky's travel on the Trans Am Trail on Facebook. And, she rode from West Coast to East Coast, and she's, local St. Paul, Minnesota gal. And then I actually ended up interviewing a few other women before I went on the GDMBR to ask them some questions. But really, I think it was just because I had watched and seen that they can do it. So I spoke with a Mary Ehlers who actually raced the Tour Divide. She answered some questions, but more importantly, it was just seeing that confirmation, talking with the person who did it. And she's just a normal human being. And I'm a normal human being. So why wouldn't I be able to do that? And I spoke with Marisa Leblay, who, she did a test ride that year.
She did.
And I've been following her test ride. And the year that I did the GDMBR, she actually raced the tour and came in, I think, 8th in women.
She came 8th. She was actually, she's released a video of that as well. And I definitely encourage viewers to watch that. What I loved about her story as well, Katrina, was like there was this competitive side there too, which I really love. I love that we were allowed to embrace being competitive in that side. For me personally, what I loved was she was chasing the wheels of previous guest April Drage. Because April was always the person just in front of her. I can get her. and for me, I was watching that thinking about April. Shout out to you, April. You're amazing. And another person that's inspiring people, because April was very much, for her, being on the Tour Divide was like this amazing cycling adventure holiday. She wasn't seeing it as a race per se. She was just enjoying being out there. So I love that part as well.
Yeah. But Marie actually had a video from her very first bikepacking trip that I had seen, and that had inspired me. And that's why I had reached out to her, because she has this moment in the first, I think she called it a bikepacking story. It was a tour that she did like in Utah. And she goes on this very abandoned road and she says, well, this is me and I'm all alone. And well, here goes, something to that effect. And again, I saw a strong, powerful woman just doing it. So I don't think it ever gave me pause that this wasn't something that I could do. So I just set about planning and preparing for it. I knew I had the fitness. I trained using a program called Trainer Road. I wrote to them and asked, how do I use your program to train for 50 days on the bike? And they said, well, just program it as if it's a stage race that just keeps going on and on. So that's what I did. I trained for a multi-day stage race using their algorithms. And then I did some weight training to make sure that my body was ready for the physical demands. And of course, research gear obsessively. And then other than that, studied the maps. I'd heard of all of these places that they talk about on the Tour Divide race, and I wanted to find them. So I made a challenge about, where is Coco Claims and where is the Llama Ranch, and finding those places on the maps so that I got to know the route a little bit, because it's a little daunting to try to learn an entire 2,700 mile route.
And also a route with so much varying landscapes, varying terrain, varying demands on your body as well. I love that you incorporated weight training into that, because I think there's places on the route where I started talking like an American, but there's places on the trail where you're not cycling this part. You have to hike a bike certain sections, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I knew I'd have to be pushing my bike. And also, I knew that, when you're cycling and you're only moving your body in one plane all the time, you know, in the forward plane, you're neglecting the muscles that are on the sides of your body. So I wanted to make sure that I could maximize the ability of my body to compensate for those motions so that I wouldn't be injured. That was a main point of doing this strength training beforehand, too.
Listeners, if you're planning a bike tour, a holiday, or maybe even heading to an event on the other side of the country and you want to avoid the hassles of flying with your bike, then Bike Flights is a service well worth looking into. They specialise in bike shipping and making it easy to send your bike safely door to door, especially for international travel when, let's face it, flying with a box bike is stressful and can often feel like too much. There's a link in the show notes if you want to learn more, and if you do book through that link, it also helps support me and the podcast out at no extra cost to you. Okay, now back to the episode. I want to take you back to a quote that I read from you, Katrina, about when you first arrive on that day. And you said, "I haven't experienced anything much more terrifying than watching a loved one drive away, leaving me with my bike and a bunch of gear to find my way back to the States through the wilds of Canada. No matter how much I've planned, nothing could prepare me for that moment." I want to go back to that moment with you, and I want to understand what you're thinking at that point in time, just before adventure starts.
Yeah, I was really nervous. They're pulling away and I'm thinking, "Yeah, I'm in Canada. I'm not even in my home country." And even if I wanted to get home, which is shorter than the destination of New Mexico, that's still a long way to go. So, I'm going to have to survive on my ability and my planning and my gear and put it all to work. It just became a stark reality in that moment, but it didn't last long because very shortly after that, I hit some really fun single track. And it kind of transported me back to all of those trips that I'd done before when I was enjoying myself. And I realized, oh, right. That's why I'm doing this, because this is the thing that makes me happy to be here in this moment doing this thing.
I mean, you were on day one of 54 days of being happy doing the thing.
Yeah.
A massive, massive trip. I guess also, Katrina, listening to you talk, there's certain aspects of you don't know what you don't know till you get there, right? But also, you physically put stuff on your bike into bags. You put what you needed to survive into bags. But in a way, there's all this stuff that's invisible that you've already packed along with you, which is just all the experience that you'd been building up on all these different trips as well.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. And all of that just kind of kicked in once I started using it. The first day when I set up camp, everything came together. I felt so natural, Oh, right. Okay. I know what to do here. I've got my tent up and it felt very familiar.
What was the place you were looking forward to the most on the trail?
I think, a little bit of a fangirl in me from watching all of those videos. I was excited to see like the iconic bike packing friendly places like the Llama Ranch or
Brush Mountain Lodge.
thank you, Brush Mountain Lodge. Yeah. And they were everything that I had imagined and more. I cannot believe that that type of generosity exists in this world. And I'm so glad that it does.
I want you to take me back to Llama Ranch, actually. Tell me about how it's set up and tell others who may not know about it just the awesomeness that's there for bike travelers who get to this place.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible from the start. I pulled up and the fellow, I think it's John, he was sitting on the porch and just said, "Oh yeah, come on over here, but put your bike down. It's okay. And have a seat here and have a sandwich and a drink, and it was just there's a cooler out on the porch just waiting for you to, take a load off. And once you are feeling a little relaxed and calm, he takes you over to all of the accommodations. And the one that was available for me was this little wagon. And if you go inside the wagon, like a covered wagon.
Yeah, like an old school wagon. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And, it's like every child's dream, right? You get to camp out in one of these things, but it had beds in it. It had blankets, which, that's a luxury when you're bike packing, a bed and blankets, regular bedding. And It had a little stove in there. It had dried and canned goods to eat. There was a bottle of wine if you wanted something like that. And everything was just free. And he said right from the outset, just pay it forward. That's all we ask. That mentality stayed with me and everyone that I met, frankly, along the trail from then on, because we were just so grateful. And the other thing was just being able to meet all of the other bikepackers. A lot of the trip was very isolated. So meeting those people and hearing their stories and, seeing the northbound people and the southbound people meeting up in this one place. And it was everything to me, after especially being alone for so long, to connect and communicate with other people in that way.
I feel like this trip gave you the best of both worlds in that, because I feel like it gave you the gift of time with yourself to process whatever you want, to appreciate your surroundings, to do the thing that gives you energy. But also, you had these moments of community interspersed along the trip as well. You had your friend Tracy come out and join you, right? You made a friend with, was it Carl?
Yeah, Carl.
You didn't know Carl beforehand, did you?
No, I met him at a community center where we spent the night.
And then you've all of a sudden made these amazing memories. You probably know more about Carl than you possibly do about people that you grew up with.
That's definitely true.
Do you reflect back on that, Katrina, thinking that as well? Like the balance of time on your own with people as well?
When people ask me, sometimes you get the very general question about what was the best part of your trip. It's always the people. And it's just such a strange answer to something that's a solo ride in the wilderness. But I think what happens is, the loneliness, and then also just seeing so many incredible things, you just want to share it with people. And also it just makes you very open and vulnerable to accept help, to having conversations with strangers, to petting a little dog that you see. Any type of interaction that you can have that's meaningful, you're just so much more open and appreciative of. And I feel like all the people on the trail are the same way. So you become very deeply and fast friends with all those people. In fact, when I got back from the ride, I ended up sending cards out to most of the people that I met, that had helped me. And it wasn't just to thank them, it was to connect with them one more time. The people that ran the warm showers, the woman that gave me a ride across a bare area. Yeah, just people that I encountered that made an impact. The couple that I met in the middle of Canada at a campground that spoke with me on a hard day. I just kept track of all of their information and connected to them afterwards.
I absolutely love that. It reminds me of a previous guest, Killingbeck, who I guess rode the trail in the other direction to you.
Yeah, I met her at a warm showers.
There was like 1 degree of separation. I'm speaking to a guest who knows a guest. Didn't know the guest before the adventure, though. That's pretty cool. But she mentioned something that you've reminded me of there, is how she had this chance meeting with someone on her very first trip that really transformed so much of her adventures now. Just that realization of someone taking joy from just being on the bike, just being outdoors, and I can do that too, and how that motivated her to get through her tough times. And the happenstance of the serendipity of meeting a stranger, they don't know what an impact that little bit of kindness or that curiosity of the conversation that sparked between the two has on you. But it sounds like you had so many moments, Katrina, where those conversations really lifted you up and got you through moments as well.
Yeah, they definitely enhanced the whole experience and kind of wove themselves into the whole narrative of the trip. In fact, when I kept a journal at night, I always made a point to write down any people that I met, including their names, even if I never talked to them again. But I wanted to remember their stories and the interaction that we had. And there's just some amazing stories. Even just a guy that I met on the side of the road in Canada told me that the anecdote about when they see somebody in Denmark, I think, and they wish them well, they say success, but in their words. Yeah. And then when I rode off, he said success. It's those little stories when I go back and read my journals that they bring me right back to that spot and bring up all the warm feelings that I had.
I love that you kept a journal of that and that you wrote their names down. I love learning little things on this podcast too. Like success is what they'll say to you in Denmark. Katrina, if you come to France, they'll say courage, bon courage.
Oh, that's a good one.
And often I think, oh, what do they know that's up ahead of me that's going to be hard that I've got to get through? Success. I love that. Keeping a journal of your adventure there, has that been something, have you always journaled? Is that something that you've often done before?
It really isn't, but on every single bikepacking trip that I've gone on, I've kept a journal and I found it to be incredibly rewarding because I feel like you're only in that moment for a short time in your life and you want to be able to remember everything and just the density of the experiences, the things that you see and you feel and you smell and all of your senses and the people that you meet. You're not going to remember that, even 3 weeks from the moment. So they're richer than anything that I could journal on a daily basis. They're great to go back to and revisit.
The things that meant so much to you from that time, which you on any other day would maybe not even pay a moment's notice to as well. Do you go back through your journals now? Do you randomly just flick through a journal and you go, oh, this was day 32 on the divide and this is what happened? Like, do you ever do anything like that?
Occasionally, but I think where it really came into play is when I started to make the videos because I was trying to remember, okay, what happened on this day? And the format of the video was really kind of a day by day. So it was easy enough for me for the narration to just go back into my journals. What did I see? What did I notice? And just that turned into the soundtrack for the videos that I did. So yeah, I looked at them quite extensively.
That would have been such a joyous process for you as well. It was a question I had for you was you did decide obviously to video this journey. And I think what's cool about that, Katrina, is you learnt about the Great Divide mountain bike route watching someone's videos. And now all of a sudden here you are, you're the person doing the route, making the videos as well. What was your experience of doing that like?
It was really strange. I'd seen all the different things that people did to make good videos. And I thought when I first started out, oh, maybe I'll interview myself every day, or maybe I'll set up that camera on the ground and ride my bike past it. But all of that went out the window like on the first day because it's just an overwhelming experience to ride your bike for that long. And there's so many things that you have to think about and worry about. So it became more about just always wearing the GoPro, turning it on when I saw something beautiful and turning it off and then stringing those clips together. So, and then I went back and looked at the Canada footage, and my camera was staring down at a weird angle towards my bag. And I thought, oh no, like that was most of Canada when I wasn't even getting very good footage. But yeah, when I got home, I had to think about it for quite a long time. It was like, here I had just video and what's the story? How is the story going to develop? How am I going to put all this together in a meaningful way? And it was really just meant to be for myself, for my family, to show them the places that I'd seen. And eventually, I put the first Canada video together and it kind of set a prototype for the others. And it was getting too long. So it would just turn out to be the Canada portion. And I put that online and I started, slowly working on the second one. And it went up to like 60,000 hits. And I was thinking, oh, I've got to do this next one now. All of a sudden I had this kind of like pressure almost, but it was really a great way to process everything because, I would see the video, I would go through the journals and, create the narration. Some parts I didn't want to relive, like when I had a really bad day or it was really crabby or I took a detour and I felt, embarrassed about that. Or, towards the end, I got sick. There were some moments towards the end of the trip when, I wasn't very successful and I just decided I'm going to put it all out there and not really edit it to make myself look good. Just, this is how it was. This is the honest experience for me. And I found that to be very cathartic, maybe is a little too strong of a word, but yeah, it felt really honest. And by the time I had finished the videos, I felt like I had relived through the experience in a way that finally I understood. Because, when you stop an adventure, you're just like, you don't know what to make of it all. Yeah, putting that video together and telling the stories of the different pieces of the trip at a time helped me process the whole experience. So by the end, I understood myself better.
It's interesting. Do you have a different self-talk to what you did during the moment? You talked about, And I watched this play out on your videos. And actually, we should have a quick shout out to your YouTube channel, which you've put them on as well, so that those who haven't seen it can see. What's your YouTube channel?
YouTube.com at Katrina Hase.
I'll provide a link to that in the show notes, listeners. But when I was watching that, and you could hear that struggle of, oh no, I'm just not sure if I'm going to get to the end. Maybe I got to, things weren't going well for you. Reflecting back on your actual journey there and your adventure, do you have a different way that you would talk to yourself now in that moment?
Yeah, I think, at the moment, if I took a detour, I would feel a little embarrassed or ashamed that I took the detour. I'm not doing the actual route, and I was on trackleaders.com. Everybody back home was aware of any detour that I was taking, and anyone that could watch me and follow me. So I felt like I had to justify it at first. But then going back and doing the video, I had this epiphany that the moments when I went off trail, created a route, did my own thing because that's what I wanted, were the moments where I was often the happiest. And I think it felt really empowering to create my own adventure. So literally,
Yeah.
because now you're not just following somebody's idea of what you should do, you're following what you designed. And so if it's a big hill, it's your big hill, you created it, so you do it. And for me, bring it on. I love that kind of thing. If I created a challenge for myself, I was much more willing to accept it than some person I'd never met who created the route.
Oh, I love that. Which I guess brings me to a different type of question then, Katrina. Do you think your future adventures will be on a defined route already? Or do you think you would take the trip of mapping out your own route and just saying, I'm going to start here, my end destination's here, I've got a rough idea, but I don't know how I'm going to get there?
I think there's going to be a combination of both. And one thing I discovered on a recent trip is that sometimes the route creator is really, they're telling a love story of their area by showing you all of their favorite places. And when a route is designed like that, it feels really intimate and you want to follow the route. And it's a hard thing to know until you're on the route, right? If it's that type of experience. But, if it's not working for me, I'm not going to feel guilty about leaving. It's my adventure and I get to do what I want. Yeah, I would do it like from a case to case basis. This summer, I'm going to be doing a route that I'm super excited to be riding. It's very backcountry. And the reason I chose this one, not only because I love the area, it's on the border of Colorado in the United States and Utah, but also because I want to test myself to see how I can do on those multiple days in the backcountry. That was definitely a weakness of mine on the trip. And maybe a weakness is a not great way to say it. It's a growth area. I didn't have a feeling of comfort when I was more than a couple of days out from a resupply station. So now I want to see, can I improve that? Can I go several days without a resupply and be more remote and establish a place where I'm feeling more comfortable with that so that I can enjoy it?
Listeners, if you've ever done a long day on a bikepacking trip or a cycle tour and ended up sitting on the ground, in the grass, or on a rock, well, you know the value of a good camp chair. I personally use the Helinox Chair Zero. I love it because it's super light, it packs down tiny, and honestly, it makes evenings at camp way more comfortable. Now, I don't have a discount code for you, but if you're thinking of picking a camp chair up, hit up my affiliate link, which you'll find in the show notes. That will help support me and this podcast out at no extra cost to you. Thanks so much, and now back to the episode. Yeah, well, I love that you're finding new ways of challenging yourself as this sort of experience progresses as well. Like it's obvious, like since starting out on the mountain bike, it's all about progression.
Yeah.
A lot of people would look at the Great Divide mountain bike route and think, how do you progress more from that? And it's so obvious how, to me, it's talking to you, it's like, well, that's one thing, but I'm looking forward to many, many others, and there's challenges still to come, which is pretty cool. You mentioned something about when you deviated from the route that was your adventure and it was your unknown about to take place. I'd love you to share an experience of the unexpected, like when the unexpected did happen to you during this trip? Unexpected moments could be good moments, it could be bad moments, but they take us by surprise, and how we react really determines the course of the rest of that day. What were some unexpected moments for you?
The first thing that comes to mind is, the idea that I got sick and how I dealt with that. But I think I just want to jump really quick to the idea of doing laundry. I know that sounds really
Oh, okay.
funny, but I didn't realize when I started all the planning and everything that I would become obsessed with laundry because when you're a bike packer and you can only carry so many things, and I wasn't using panniers, I had a simple bike packing kind of setup. And so I only had two chamois. And so every time you got to camp, the first thing almost was to do your laundry. And if you didn't have running water, it was like, how are you going to do the laundry with the running water? How are you going to do laundry in a washing machine at the hotel, but you only have liquid soap? Googling, can I do laundry with dish soap? I did laundry in a waterproof bag by shaking it at camp one time. I did laundry by wading into the lake. At the very end of my trip, when my husband joined me at night, I would see him, and the first thing I did was go to the laundromat. He's like, "Is this what you do every single time?" I'm like, "If I have a laundromat, yeah, I'm doing all my laundry."
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's like the little miracles that happen. It's like, wow, what a luxury. There's a washing machine.
It's just a funny thing. Like, if you go back through my journals, like how many times I talk about laundry in my journals. So
The obsession. You could call it the laundry tour,
yeah, so
the
I was
laundry divide.
the laundry divide, laundry and cows. That was kind of the theme. There are a lot of cows on the divide.
I'm a massive cow lover.
Oh, well, good. You would enjoy the Great Divide then. Yeah, you're never alone.
Actually, speaking of times where you want to be alone, something that I noticed that you had, obviously you're going through bear country, and you had like a bell on your handlebars, like your bear bell that's like ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. Yeah, it got louder every time you went over a bump, and there were plenty of bumps. Yeah.
Did that become something that you could only hear? And was that comforting to hear it? Or was it something that you even knocked out from your mind as well? Like you just became in tune to the noise of the bear bell?
I really hated that thing. I really did. But it was, I was, taking the advice of everybody that said, I knew where the bears were supposed to be. And I really wanted to be safe and not be that person, that solo female mountain biker, that got eaten by the bear. So I kept it on and I sang and did all of the things. But in the end, I didn't see a bear, and I was really disappointed. So I kind of wish I hadn't.
I remember actually watching, there's a moment in one of your videos, I don't remember which episode it's in, but I think you're coming up to something like, oh my God, there's a bear. There's bears up ahead. And then I'm like, whoa, what would I be doing? And then all of a sudden it's like, they're not bears, are they?
No, it's a cow. Yeah, and what's hilarious about that video when I watch back is that I never once considered taking the bear spray out, which was in a holster on my back, So I probably would have been toast. I just wasn't concerned about bears. I just figured they're more afraid of me than I have of them, and they would move along.
That's a good mentality to take. Did you have to do like bear hangs as well then?
Yeah, surprisingly not, because where grizzlies were active, which was mostly in Canada and Montana, and I stayed at public campgrounds, they all had the lockable bear lockers. So yeah, that was a huge convenience. I didn't have to hang my food, but in dry camping areas, I did whenever I could. I never just left my food on my bike. I always took all the food out, put it in the op sack, and then put that within a dry bag and hung it.
Yeah, it was something with previous guests, Viola and Jeff, that I had never thought of was it's not just food, it's anything that has a smell. Like they had to soap and deodorant and stuff. Like I had never ever conceived of that was something you had to worry about too.
Yeah, and part of my preparation, I read the entire report from the Ovando attack on the woman. And that was probably not an awesome thing to do, but that in that case it was she had reused a bag that had a scent to it, and that was what attracted the bear. So I need to remove anything with a scent.
Katrina, one of the biggest highlights of the trail is the diversity of the landscapes. Like, because you're going up in so much elevation and descending the elevation, and you're going to these high areas above the tree line, and then you're coming down into, like, small town America. I think one of the anecdotes that you came about, the divide revealed landscapes far beyond those I've already explored on my many trips to Colorado. I rode through high mountain passes, aspen groves, reservoirs, pine forests, and lush valleys with shallow, rocky streams. At the start of the show, we were talking about your appreciation for nature and the little things and watching the birds. I imagine just every day you were absolutely captivated by the scenery changing as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think the thing that really highlighted it was the plants, because I learned pretty quickly that some plants will grow at some elevations, and then those will cease, and another set of plants will grow at the next elevation. So it was really fun to see that change, and after a while I could kind of tell like what elevation I was at by the plant life that was there. So that was really thrilling. But then, yeah, too, you would go through a pine forest, and then you're just lined with trees all day long, and then you pop to the top of the climb and there's this amazing view. And then that's the first time you really get a sense of where you are, because you're not just following this tree line path all day. And then you come down and you might hit a valley and there's farm fields. I came into a farm field full of dill. I never even knew that farmers grew dill in a field.
As someone with Greek origin, if I smell dill, the first thing I think of is spanakopita.
Oh, yeah.
Yum. Sorry. but the smell of it, like, was there an overwhelming smell of dill in the air as well?
Yeah, you definitely knew it was dill, both by the smell and by the sight of the flowers. But yeah, it was incredible. But yeah, it was those kind of surprising moments of when you go up and go down, the difference in the landscapes that you saw. And then the further south I went in Montana, it became almost entirely brush, and you'd find yourself surrounded for days on end by these dome-shaped mountains, and I almost started to feel like they were pushing in on you. I became like desperate to.
Almost claustrophobic sort
Yeah,
of
I just
thing.
wanted to. I just wanted to get out and get over them and see what was beyond, because it just became a little bit oppressive. And then when you get back into the trees, you're just joyful, and you start to see water, way more water in Montana than I ever could have imagined. I always imagined it as kind of a drier state. But anytime you saw water, that again, like when you see animals on a long bike tour and you get really excited, even if like they're domestic and you can pet them. Anytime I saw water, just felt like this feeling of comfort and excitement and connection that I wouldn't have felt otherwise. I always wanted to stop and dip my toes into it, but didn't always get the chance to do that. But that imagined myself as I was riding by doing that.
A lift from a different element in the landscapes.
Yes. But then when you get to New Mexico, I was completely surprised that there were so many trees. If you get into the higher elevations, even in the desert, you're surrounded by these gorgeous trees. And then when you've come down off the mesas on the plateaus and you are in the desert, it's the most freeing feeling that you can imagine, because now all of a sudden your sight lines, which have been blocked for days, are just opening up and you can see forever. And the sunrises, the sunsets, everything is incredible because of that. Just an amazing feeling to be in that openness.
It's interesting. Every single guest I've ever interviewed who's taken this trip along this route always speaks so fondly about the experience of that final state and being in the desert and being in New Mexico. And I wonder if that's like one of the hidden elements of it, is that you're not hemmed in by this big mountain range anymore, and all of a sudden you have these big sky country, big open vistas all ahead of you as well.
Absolutely. And I saw the most wildlife in New Mexico as well. I saw my first javelina ever.
Oh, I don't know what a javelina is.
Oh, it's crazy. They look like little pigs, but I understand them to be more like rodents. I think they're related to rodents. And I'd always heard these people in Arizona talking about the javelinas, and I never saw one. And I got so frustrated after all these visits to Arizona that I thought they were like a mythical creature, and they just like to pull the legs of the Northerners, like tease us that they don't really exist. So when I actually saw a javelina, I'm like, they do exist. They're for real. Javelinas are real.
Oh, I love it when you can have those type of moments as well. Something else when I think of this route, obviously you're traversing a mountain range, and as happens with areas along this, mountains create their own weather systems quite often as well. Something you would definitely have been aware of before you embarked on it is you can get some wild weather come in during your time there. Did you experience that through your journey? And were there moments of, I don't know, tension or pensiveness because of inbound storms and weather?
Definitely, there were moments like that, but I think I was pretty lucky overall. You know, some of the days in the early part of the trip in Montana were very hot, and you finally had to drink quite a lot. I did an entire day where I rode in what they called was a drizzle on the weather forecast, but it was a soaking drizzle. Everything that I had soaked through, but it wasn't awful because no storm came in that day and everything was just colored in this beautiful yellow light because of it. When I was with Tracy, we were chased by storms coming close to the basin, and that was probably the scariest thing. We were trying to outrun a storm at the end of like a 80 almost 90-mile day. I had no legs to outrun this storm, and you could just see this black cloud behind us that was coming on us. We did make it, but it shook us a little bit. The winds in the basin, we didn't ride the entire basin, but the part that we did, we got a good taste of these strong headwinds. And then when I got down to New Mexico, they were having an unseasonably wet summer, and I had to do that's when I did a lot of my rerouting, is to be on pavement because the roads turn into absolute peanut butter like instantly. I experienced a small amount of that, and it was utterly impassable. You just have to wait until it dries and walk in the brush, but it's not a fun situation.
No, and I've often wondered because I've seen a few of my guests and I've spoken to a few of them talking about this. Jack Keogh, he raced the Tour Divide and he had peanut butter mud. Gosh, he had this moment where, like you, but he had a tailwind. I think it was in the basin, and it was beautiful. And then all of a sudden it rained, so he had to stop. And then the next day it was like he's walking because it's just peanut butter mud and it's not great at all. I've often wondered how long does it take for those roads to darn well dry out?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it could be within a day, but definitely it takes a little bit of time. And what's scary about it is, it slows you down to the extent that, you'd plan to be in a certain place at a certain time and you probably have a little bit of extra food. But if the roads are impassable for a long period of time, you could be starting to run out of food and water. And that's a real thing. So you have to plan for that.
I imagine then, Katrina, there would have been times where you're coming into services and you must just be in your happy place, almost hallucinating food that you're going to be eating. I always have a section of the podcast that goes down the rabbit hole of food, and I'd love you to take me to a moment of like what was your go-to food when you were on the trail and you were finally coming into a place to resupply? What were you finding you were seeking out?
Oh my gosh. Well, the thing that I discovered on the trail that I loved more than anything was a bagel with cream cheese to to pack the next day because they just stay perfect in back pocket of your jersey. And they have so many calories. And so if I was able to get that like at a motel or even a bagel shop, which would be like the ultimate luxury, that would be super exciting. But also breakfast burritos or any kind of burrito that you could get is stuff in your back pocket again. Those were absolute bliss. And the first time I had Mexican food was Colorado. I don't know what's going on in Canada and Montana, but you need some more Mexican restaurants because I did not get to taste any Mexican food until I got to Colorado. So every opportunity I had to eat Mexican food from then on, I did because it tasted amazing.
Oh my gosh, I have to ask you as well. What pie did you have in Pie Town?
Oh gosh. We came into Pie Town and it was closed. The whole town was closed. Apparently there was a pie festival that had happened the weekend before, and everyone was just tired and didn't want to be open. So yeah, we were there at the right time, but every restaurant, even the convenience store was closed. So if it hadn't been for that toaster house we wouldn't have had food that night because I didn't have enough provisions, planning on eating there and going to the convenience store. But the Toaster House is like a place that was willed to the hikers and bike packers, and they, people can just eat anything that's in the pantry. So that saved us. No pie.
The irony of not being able to have a pie in Pie Town because everyone in Pie Town is at a pie festival. Sorry. I live for food. A lot of my listeners will know that I live for food. My heart would have just been so sunk because
Yes.
I listened to you, Katrina, and I could tell that you've planned so many places on this trip. And I imagine that, similar to Llama Ranch, Blush Mountain Lodge, Pie Town is a place that you're probably thinking about. Like, what pie would you have wanted to have in Pie Town?
Oh, probably, yeah, something that had a lot of fruit in it because I felt like it was very fruit deprived. I needed some fresh fruits and vegetables. That was the thing I craved the most on the trail.
That is something that I often miss the most whenever I'm on, multi-day sort of bike adventures. I'm always craving ways to get fresh produce in, like fresh fruit and vegetables, because I feel like you go down this rabbit hole of salty, processed, easy to buy food sometimes. And I imagine that would be the case when you're resupplying in small towns or at the service station, the services. It's easy to take with you food, doesn't equate to fresh food, right?
Right, right. But yeah, the first time we get into a restaurant, the first thing you do is order a massive salad and then you'll order your entree. But yeah, the idea of getting the vegetables in, it was non-negotiable. Tracy and I both had a passion for that.
I want you now to take me to one day of your trip. People often, get asked to describe their whole journey, which is impossible when it contains so many moments, which is so big. But I would love you to just take me to just one portion of your day and describe the day on this trip for you and what it was like on that day.
Oh, the one that comes to mind is my first bad day back on trail after I'd have been sick with a cold flu. So I didn't want to miss a really hard section of the trail that went in New Mexico from Abiquiu south, and it goes up onto this big plateau. It's a huge 20-mile climb, and it's a dry camp night. So definitely a challenge, but I didn't want to miss it. So I'm taking it very slow, taking breaks. And I get to the top of the mesa and I see what I think might be a nice view. So I go over to see the view. And while I'm sitting there on a rock, just really enjoying it, I look and my phone has a signal. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to check in here real quick. And I realized that Lachlan Morton was going to be riding past me that day, at the rate that he was going. He was closing in on Abiquiu and certainly would be passing me. So the whole rest of the day was so surreal because I was, completely alone and climbing some monstrous kind of boulderish roads, rocky, exhausted. But I kept thinking, don't stop. Well, what if Lachlan passes you now and he sees you struggling? Don't let Lachlan see you struggling. And, I was just aware of it the entire day. And I did happen upon another bikepacker, Kenny, and we rode for a little while together. And I was checking out a water source and I heard Kenny talking and I turned around and looked and sure enough, he's talking to Lachlan Morton. I almost missed him. And I said, Lachlan, stop. Can I get your photo? And again, there's nobody around. We're just completely in the wilderness. But yeah, that he posed for a photo and that was the day I got passed by Lachlan Morton on the divide.
What a moment. I love the idea that you were motivated to keep going because you knew that he was bearing down on you and you didn't want to appear like you were taking it easy. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. He did a monumental ride there.
It was incredible.
Yeah, and the film from that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
There's an element then, Katrina, we've talked about you've created your own films from this. I've had guests who've created films from this. You've been inspired by films from this. So going into something where there's an element of visually you know what's there, how did it actually meet up? How did your perceptions meet up with reality? Having done the trail, looking back, like did it meet your expectations?
Oh, that's a tough question. Definitely if you look at it from a global view, yes, absolutely, that and more, but sometimes on the day-to-day view, like when I was feeling kind of surrounded by those mountains and the scenery didn't change, sometimes it felt like, when am I going to get to the single tracker? When am I going to get to the beauty point? Or maybe sometimes you'd be riding a really steep grade for a long time, getting to the top of this moment, and there's no view. You're kind of, a tourist going through life. There's always a little spot where you pull the car off on the side of the road and there's a little bench and you can take the picture and you can move on. But when you're doing a route like this, sometimes you just get to the top of the mountain and then you start descending. There's nothing to mark it. That's, I think, what made Colorado so exciting, because they were keen on putting the elevation signs when you reached a vista, and it made you feel like you'd accomplished something.
You'd reached a thing.
Yeah.
That really resonates with me, and I feel insignificant bringing it up in the context of something like the Great Divide mountain bike route. But I remember it was during my trip last year crossing the Pyrenees, and we had 23 mountain sort of passes on that trip that we were going up and over. I remember there was this distinctly, it ended up being the hardest day of our trip. And it started, we were taking the tourist route, because there's two different routes you can take. One's the much more direct, sort of more known Raid Pyrenees route. The other one takes the quieter roads but involves more climbing. But, quieter roads I'm all for every single day of the week. And I knew we had these cols to climb. I think we had 3 that day. And we thought we were on the first one, and my gosh, did it kick our behinds. And I topped out, and I remember me and my husband were like, oh, must be a sign here soon. Must be a sign here soon. It was nothing. That was not an official mountain pass. And we were like, what on that one? I think we've called it the Col de Malloy.
That's awesome.
And the funny thing is, I think the mountain pass didn't end up, the top out and the start of that didn't happen for ages after. And I think, it was like, eventually it was like 20 kilometers later, we were finally at the top. But yeah, yes, there's something about, like, when you're climbing and climbing for ages and it's like, what? There's no view? There's no sign? Like,
yeah. Yeah, because you've built it up in
I
your
earned
mind.
something.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. What's it like? We talked about what it was like for you standing before you turned the pedals on the start line of something that you had, understood so much and had a goal. But what was it like when you get to that quintessential finish, that fence at Antelope Wells on the border there with Mexico? What's it like to reach that, having gone through what you went through?
Yeah, that last day was just a journey and being present. I was just so excited, and I turned off the music, turned off the podcast, and just stayed in the moment, because I knew it was going to be over very quickly. And sure enough, that every time you hit the end of your destination for the day, the last 10 miles are the hardest. And it was no different. The last day of the divide, I turned, and that's when the headwinds started coming in on me, and I just breathed it all in, like, yeah, I gotcha, I see ya. Then seeing my aunt and uncle had showed up at the end, and my husband was there. Even if they hadn't been, my heart just started thumping. It was just so exciting to see the fence, to see the iconic, place where people take the pictures, and to realize that I had actually done the thing all the way to the end. And it was really fun, as I forgot and left my GoPro on, and I captured all of those moments, the hugs, the tears, and seeing that again and reliving those moments. I always tear up a little bit when I watch that.
Oh, it's a pretty emotional moment. And I think the thing that's cool is you've also got it from the other perspective of people watching you come in too, which is cool.
Yeah, that was really fun to put together. And then then you take the photos, you do the thing, and then, like, you're just in the car. Like, it's such a stark contrast.
Transition.
Yeah. So, and you just know that, we had 2.5 days of driving to get back to Minnesota. So, it took a while to really come down and to process. And like I said, the videos helped a lot. But yeah, you're changed forever after that. And yeah, it doesn't leave you, the feeling that you had on the divide. It just, nothing ever looks the same again.
Did you think that was going to be the case before you set off, or is it just something you don't know is going to happen? And, it happens over a course of time. It's not an overnight thing by any measure.
I definitely heard of it. My friend Rachel, who I referenced before, she actually ended up going on the PCT trail the same time that I was doing the divide. In her research, she discovered about the post-trail depression. I think that's what they talk about. I knew that that was a thing and kind of expected it. So I was prepared for the idea that life was going to be changed when I got back.
Definitely. And that you've changed as a course of it.
Yeah.
It is definitely something that I've talked about with a number of my guests of when you come to the end of the thing, you've done the thing, but it's ended, and not being able to sit with that. And, I've spoken to a few guests where they find that they're putting off it ending. Like you almost want to go slower. You don't want it to end. Trying to reconcile that feeling with you as well. I think something that I've picked up on with you, Katrina, is it might be the end of that particular adventure, but it's certainly not the end of your adventures.
Absolutely.
Something which you had done, which I thought was awesome, was you went on a bikepacking adventure with your son, which was fantastic.
Such a joy.
Was it I'm just trying to think, is it the Monumental Loop?
Yes, we did the north part. It's a figure eight shaped. And so I not wanting to like overwhelm my son, we just did the north part.
Oh, wow. What was it like going on a multi-day bikepacking trip with your son?
Well, it was thrilling because up until then my son, he's a diehard mountain biker, loves the adrenaline, loves the rush of going downhill, great technical rider. So he wasn't all that interested in mom's whole foray into bike packing. So when I mentioned that I was going to do this trip and he said that he wanted to come, I was kind of shocked. But overjoyed because he's living across the country from me right now, and so to have the opportunity of just spending uninterrupted time with him in the wilderness, nothing that would be better than that. I thought it would be about showing him the ropes, showing him how to do the bike packing, but he was just such a natural.
Was that a little bit annoying?
No. I actually was really excited to see like, oh, look how you put the same bag that you have on your bike, and he found a different way of doing it and it made a lot of sense. So yeah, I'm just admiring the way that he did things. And I really admired the way, like at the end of the day, I would be journaling and I said, I don't remember, did we do this or do this? And he could play back the entire journey in his memory, spatially as far as where we went, and had a much better recollection of that particulars. I was really impressed by that. I guess to answer your question, I think as a mom, I was just enjoyed watching him, seeing where he excelled, how he could climb those rough, steep passes. His victory was my victory. I'm just a proud mama.
We talked about it earlier when we were talking about your experience of being on the Great Divide mountain bike route, being able to share moments with other bikepackers, with other people, with your friends who turned up as well, because you're making memories together and you want to share that experience. So being able to share an experience that you're making with your son, I think that's awesome.
And then again, being able to relive it by making the video afterwards too was really fun, and to get his reaction, just seeing it. Yeah.
Something I really loved about watching that video was this was the first time you had packed up a bike to put in a box to go on a plane to go somewhere. And, you talked about, it's going to be a test to see if I can do it. And you realized you could, which now makes more possibilities for you. Does this mean that potentially, are you thinking more possibilities in different parts of the States, or are you perhaps even thinking further afield and more possibilities of taking on trails overseas in different continents, in different countries?
Yeah, I hadn't dared to dream to do a trip in other countries and until I got over that hurdle. And now that I know that I can take my bike apart, I can put it in a box, it's not a difficult thing to do. I can pack it back up and all will be good. I've found myself dreaming about, especially actually listening to your podcast and hearing all the places that your guests have gone. It gives me ideas and things to research further afield. So yeah, that's definitely something to look forward to in the future.
Oh, I love that it's giving you sensations of wanderlust, because for me personally, Katrina, each week when I record with a guest, the sense of pull to go to my bike and put some gear on it and go away somewhere. Can I ask them the next cheeky question of what sort of places are you thinking about at the moment?
Definitely going back to New Mexico, going back to Colorado, going to Colorado and Utah. So I'm exploring backcountry and desert. I'm actually in New Mexico. I'm doing a part of the trail that I missed when I was sick. I just really wanted to see it. So I'll be able to go back and ride that.
Reconnecting the links to that part of the trail too, and joining the dots, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. So right now it's all about shorter trips that make me uncomfortable. Like I said, riding more in the backcountry. And the Colorado one that I'm going to be doing is just so I can see the wildflowers. I miss them. I missed the season for Columbine by the time I went through Colorado. So I didn't see a single Columbine while I was there. So I have to go back to see them in full bloom.
Would it ever spark you to paint them? Like, I know you paint birds. Do you paint flowers?
I haven't, but yeah, I wouldn't say no to that. That sounds pretty cool.
Own little challenge there. When you paint a Columbine, you can think of me.
Yes, okay, deal.
Oh my gosh, Katrina, I have to bring this to a close and wrap things up. But people will be interested in hearing about you, and I'm guessing intrigued about watching future adventures play out. If they want to follow your future journeys, what's the best way that they can find you there online?
Definitely my YouTube channel, which is at Katrina Hase, or my Instagram is kind of hard to say out loud, but you'll have the link, maybe Birds and Bike and Ballet.
Birds and bikes and ballet. I love it because all those three things really make up how you are now.
Yeah.
It's something that's pretty clear is you've sort of changed the trajectory of where your life was headed, and you've made some positive changes. You've found community within your new passions as well. And, it's driving you forward to do the hard things and take on the hard challenges, which is brilliant. So listeners, I will provide links to those in the show notes for Katrina as well. All right, Katrina, I have 3 questions to wrap my show up with, and I ask them of all my guests. The first is, you as a guest now get to get a song put into the Seek Travel Ride guest playlist. This playlist, listeners, is now available on Spotify and Apple Music under Seek Travel Ride. I've got links in the show notes to that as well. So, Katrina, if you have to pick a song to be the soundtrack to your adventures, what song's going on that list for you?
Well, definitely one that I have in my head all the time when I'm bike adventuring is the To the Great Unknown by Cloud Cult.
Oh, I don't know this song, but I love the name.
Oh, yeah. That'll get you through anything. It's a beautiful song. Yeah.
Did you listen to that on the trip?
Yes, listen to it and also just sang it in my head quite a lot when I couldn't listen to music.
And are there lines particularly in it that really resonate with you, or is it just the tune?
There are, but I'm not going to be able to recall them right now.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. I will get to listen to it like I do with this playlist and think of my beautiful guests' adventures while the song's playing as well. So that's pretty cool. All right, final 2 questions. You're going to be riding your bike one day and you have a choice. You can go ride this bike constantly up a never-ending hill climb or battle into a never-ending headwind. Which one would you choose?
Yeah, it's going to have to be the hill climb. I'm not a huge fan of hills, being a Midwesterner and coming from the flatlands, but yeah, those winds, they are demoralizing.
And to think that you ended this trip with the last 10 miles of raging headwinds as well.
It doesn't matter. I can do anything for 1 more hour.
Oh, I love that. You can do anything for 1 more hour. Was that like a little self-talk that you had along the journey?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like your own little mantra?
Yeah, can do it. Everything ends, everything changes, So Tracy and I would always say, every day is hard. You just do the hard thing and then relax and then go do it again the next day.
Yeah, eat a burrito.
Yeah,
Eat the pie filled with fruit.
Yeah,
hopefully. Oh my gosh, I think you have to go back to Pie Town actually.
Yeah, now
I'm
hungry for pie all of a sudden, yeah.
If you were talking to an Aussie, Katrina, you'd be having a savoury pie. That's what our pies are.
Oh, you could put that in your pocket. That'd be good.
Personally, to me, I can't have a savoury pie when I'm riding until the end because it's not going to stay in my stomach. But anyway, that's not a visual anyone needs.
Okay.
All right, final question. I think I know the answer to this, but it'll be interesting because you did a mix of this on your adventure. But you have a choice. It's only a 4-hour ride, but you have a choice to do that 4 hours on your own or 4 hours with other people. Which one are you going to do?
Yeah, because it's for 4 hours. Yeah, I'm going to choose a friend for sure. Have the social aspect of it. The longer that you get, it's kind of nice to be by yourself because you can go through all the things on your own terms. But yeah, for a 4-hour ride, yes, please. Let's have some conversation and some fun.
often that's the case with my guests. Because they know it's a shorter ride, they're happy to have that time with people. But for a longer ride, they'd like to give that gift of time with just themselves. I'd love to delve into why that is the case. So 4 hours with others, up a hill, singing along to The Great Unknown.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very, very good. Katrina Hase, it has been an absolute pleasure to spend some time with you, to be able to chat into a bit more of the backstory of the great YouTube clips that I had been watching, and to just learn more about you being happy, learning in this passion with this community of doing the hard things. Thank you so, so much for sharing your stories and experiences on the show here for Seek Travel Ride.
Thank you, Bella. I really enjoyed it.
I absolutely love the energy of that conversation that Katrina and I had there, and hearing more about her progression, changing the trajectory of her life, but also just finding this newfound passion for adventure. I know that there's going to be more adventures, and something especially there which came out time and time again is Katrina enjoys the challenge of doing something that's perceived to be too hard, but then doing it and then moving on to the next too hard thing. It's going to be interesting to see where her multi-day remote bikepacking adventure will take place. I also especially loved just hearing about the sense of community that Katrina has found, and those new formed friendships as well through this shared love of bicycle adventures too. As I talk about community there, I have to have a shout out to this community here, the Seek Travel Ride community. We've got such a global following, and each week our community seems to be growing more and more. If you want to be a part of us, check us out on our Facebook group. I've got a link in the show notes for you there to be able to join it. Join us there now and get in on the chat where we delve in a little bit deeper into our guests' stories, their adventures through the episodes, and what resonated with us the most as well. Some of our guests are also in that group, so I definitely encourage you to check it out. Until the next episode, my name's Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening.